Tony, do you anticipate Christian Moore and Maui Ahuna being available tomorrow?
I think so. I think you're at the time of year where no one is 100%, but then how far depleted do you get? It's hard to grade out that percentage, but neither one of those guys will be sniffing that area. But they're both very competitive, and I think with the rest of the team, they'll do whatever they can to contribute this weekend, and so we'll figure that out tomorrow. But I like the odds of them at least doing something for us.
What is Moore dealing with?
Some sort of foot injury where, putting weight on that or pressure is kind of sensitive right now. So better to have it in a boot and relieve that so you're not compounding the situation. And then eventually I think you're probably going to have to play with some pain if you're going to play.
But you said Tuesday you didn't anticipate doing anything crazy with the rotation this weekend. Is that kind of still the plan? Maybe
Yeah.
What you saw last week?
Yeah, we'll go with the rotation that we went with last week. And I think it'll be a little more comfortable for Lindsey to get out there and not necessarily start, because he's done that before and he wanted to be in that position, but to give you a full allotment of pitches. Obviously, we would like to play a little better defense, or maybe he would like to make a different pitch or something like that. But it looked like for a while there, it might be a deal where you got to rip the ball out of the guy's hand. He's saying, I can go. And as a coaching staff, you got to have a little bit of restraint there on the pitch count. But I think that's kind of gone out the window now that this will be the second time around. And then maybe the other two guys are aided in their preparation by, they kind of had an idea that's what they would do. But I'm sure with the conversations about our team and, trying to either do this or that, there was a lot of chatter, and maybe that chatter gets drowned out this weekend. And each of those guys knows what day they're throwing, and they prepare the way they want and then go out there and compete the way they're capable of.
How was Burns kind of taken to that new role in the bullpen?
I think starting with last year, if you remember, in particular, the Kentucky was on fire at the SEC tournament, and he and Beam basically kind of split the game, and he came out of the bullpen and threw really well for us and did it on other occasions too. I think he's handled it well. I think it's brought a little bit of sense of relaxation to him, whether it be outside influences, maybe even us, maybe himself putting extra pressure on himself to be perfect because his stuff is so good. Probably let him down a little bit of a path he didn't want to go. And so to have a chance to reset, not really a timeout because he threw a pretty good amount of pitches for us last week, but just have a little change of scenery and almost kind of start the second half of the season with a new narrative to it, I think was probably a positive for him. And he's been more relaxed than I've seen, and also hard to argue he didn't throw the ball as well as he has thrown it this year down there in Fayetteville, over there in Fayetteville, whatever you say.
Could you see him being used multiple times this weekend? I know you said that last week.
Yeah, last week, I made a comment, once it got to game 2, we were probably looking at a one-shot deal since it was his first day out of the bullpen. We'll see how he feels today, what day he wants to be available on, kind of have a conversation with him. And then I think because he's so well-conditioned, the one thing we did up there to start the year, a conditioning challenge in the football indoor, he blew everybody out of the water. So the guy's gone to great lengths to take very good care of himself and his arm. So I think if 2 times is needed, he'd be up to the task.
What's the challenge for Maui, kind of balancing playing through some pain but not trying to give it a go if he's not a net positive?
Yeah, you don't want to go 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but I think with kind of what he's dealing with, there's a good chance that doesn't go away. So picking when you want to go full speed, taking extra care as it relates to mobility or warm-up stuff. These days, these guys do all kinds of things. I don't even know what the exercises are compared to what we did back in the day. I guess I can say back in the day now. So just having a plan, really. Having a plan, and then on game day, if you're going to put yourself out there, you got to put it in the back of your mind and compete. And I think we also have to have realistic expectations that there might be 1 or 2 things that pop up that normally he would do, but can't necessarily do in those situations.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it felt like you all were treating Lindsey like an opener last week. And do you think with the way that he pitched, he's maybe now more viewed as a starter than an opener?
Is it okay if I tell you you're wrong?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think the deal with Halvey, and he's been really good too, as being a guy that just wants the ball. And we didn't expect him to throw 2 innings this past Tuesday, but the game kind of got quirky. And like I said, I take more responsibility than anybody for that. But knowing he's available on a Friday like he is this Friday, and last weekend against Arkansas, you know he can go out there and maybe give you 4 or 5 innings. So again, to write out a guy for 5 or 6 innings just because he's the starter doesn't make sense if it's not going well. For Lindsey, really, I think we could have kept him in the game, but because we thought they'd bunt in that situation, it was a left-handed hitter, I think 2 lefties in a row or maybe a switchy. We felt good about the matchup with Kirby. Maybe if Lindsey was a better outfielder, we could have pulled the Joyce move and brought Kirby in and then put him back out there. So, again, a guy, if you look at him, he's real physical. He's a reliever that could throw all 3 days in a row for us, but now he's starting. So his arm is built up the way it needs to be to pitch as long as he and we see fit.
You spoke on this a little bit before throughout the season, but especially this weekend with all these lefties coming, what's that balance in trying to be balanced in the order, but also get your best bats in the lineup?
Yeah, I think, all year long we've kind of been toying with what's kind of the best order and also the best group, and part of that is who's healthiest, and then sometimes guys go through different parts of the year where they're maybe swinging it better than they did or not as well as before, but we're kind of at the end of the year where you got to just do it, and that goes for the coaching staff as well. We'll go with the guys that we think are the best guys regardless. Maybe there's a spot in the order where you do go a little more specific to the matchup. But our guys, need to understand that every pitcher, regardless of what arm he's throwing with, I think we even got a guy in the league that throws with both. There's a way to attack each guy. And step 1 to that is being the best version of you. And then step 2 is in this league or any league where you see great arms, having the wherewithal to understand there's a way to approach this particular pitcher on the mound. So I think that kind of precedes or takes precedent, I should say, over all that.
I know you're not really one to look so far ahead in the future, but is there any sense of pressure now that you're halfway through SEC season with possibly missing out on the postseason?
I think the pressure is to play with our best personality and best attitude, and that needs to be defined by what are, and when I say are, I mean it's time of year where it kind of they need to decide as much as the coaches. Of course, we got to do our job, but what's our best personality and how do we want to approach things? You know what I'm saying? And then the thing that to me is exciting, if you just look at league play, because if you want to kind of go off of where we're at in the schedule, Tuesday wasn't so good. But if you want to get excited about the fact that there's just as many weekends left in the SEC as we have played. Unfortunately, we start all that off, and by that I mean the second half here at home in Lindsey Nelson Stadium. And I think there's a little bit of drizzle for Saturday, but otherwise I don't see any weather that would discourage people from coming out and being rowdy.
You said on Tuesday that it's kind of the time of year to find your guys and roll with it. Just how hard is it to find a select number of guys when there's been kind of a lot of balance in production?
Yeah, I think that comes with youth, and I've seen teams before, that are real young at the start of the year. There's just one that sticks out of my mind where there's 5 freshmen. It was a heralded freshman class, is like 15 years ago. It wasn't a program I was a part of. And you saw that team in the Big 12 tournament. They were a totally different team, not because of different personnel, but because of repetitions and lessons learned added up. So we do have some guys with experience, but there's a lot of guys who have not started a full year or played a full year of college baseball, much less SEC baseball. So you'd like to think as experience tallies up and reps add up, that the play will improve as well.
What stands out about Vanderbilt, and then also I imagine with them being the rival that kind of everybody circles, emotions will be even higher than it typically is during SEC play. You kind of excited, given where you all are, to see how your team responds within that moment?
Again, my biggest level of excitement is you got the second half of the season in the league, and kind of the old, how do you eat a big old steak or an elephant, which I don't know why anyone would eat. Maybe people do eat elephant. one bite at a time. And so let's focus on the game that is here Friday. Normally you look at stuff maybe with an extra narrative. Again, with this group, make a decision on what you want your personality and your attitude to be, and it needs to revolve around the program's strengths and history and things like that, but it also needs to adhere to who are the personalities that are currently in the locker room and that'll take the ball on Friday or be in the lineup on Friday. So that to me is the bigger theme. And if you ask most of these SEC teams, my first year in the league was obviously with Arkansas. It's like, who's the rivalry? And there wasn't one, or if you ask, everyone's got a bunch of different questions. So these guys are as close as Kentucky, I think, by proximity. They're obviously in our state though, but it's a private school, and everyone in the league is trying to been trying to beat them in recruiting, for the last 20 years for a variety of reasons. And so, all those things are present, but I don't think they necessarily change what we're trying to do in our locker room or what they're trying to do either.